So we are starting up with the presentation on the document classification using machine learning, a small presentation. So after this, we are moving towards the concept of how exactly it get implemented. I already have one idea that is running for you live, and we can see this that the data has been currently being processed. So I have a data where we have the signatures available, where we have the signatures available, and on the basis of the signatures, we are checking out whether the signatures have been forged or not. And I have the data being tailed already, and it has been tested out on the various images. So we have almost 20 forged images being available to us. And my data is being iterating, rather my function is being iterating to the each database for getting out the final output. So up till now, see, most probably by the end of the lecture, you tend to have almost all the apertures get turned out, other the number of iterations get turned out, and we have the final results available. So these are the last stages. And as soon as the presentation get completed, we just go through how exactly the function works out. The research, Google Colab being used out for doing the research, mostly we use out in Manipal University for doing such kind of research because it helps us in making use of the resources available online, absolutely free of cost, and it optimize the results that actually we are looking at. So to start up my presentation, I specifically work out in the field of how exactly the feature classification is being done out. A man of machine learning, I'm still struggling with deep learning because every day I'm coming up with a new ideas that has to be worked upon. So this is a brief outline of what exactly I am presenting today. An introduction to our document classification architecture, a signature verification, why being machine learning being used out in the signature verifications. I'm specifically talking about the SIME network. That is the point of interest for me because I'm implementing this architecture in the various other fields. Currently working out with SIME networks in crop identifications, SIME networks in terms of the data being verified in the signatures, as well as the sensors network architectures and so on. So this has been studied, and finally, I am just coming up with a brief, a small, one slide presentation on where the applications of the SIME networks is about. Any questions prior to this that need to be answered, please have the chat window working out for you. And in case any questions to be answered, we have first the presentation get ended. Then we have some set of questions to be answered. Then we move towards how exactly the Colab, how exactly the practical application of SIME can be seen. So if you look at the document classification, it is one of the finest definition that was given by Professor Jennifer Godet, who says out it is an act of labeling documents into category according to their content. So the very first line has a very meaningful architecture, which says it's an act of labeling the documents into the categories. So you have a spam, you have a junk folder, you have a spam folder, you have the my inbox available, you have the specifically categorized folders available for receiving the data in your search engines or in your mail servers. So that is one of the finest form of the classifications. Though most of the things now being said out is that it can be a cluster-based architecture also, but I'm not finding out the various algorithms which supports the cluster-based architectures. Though we have two algorithms which has been frequently used out in the recommended systems, which are saying there's TF-IDF algorithm that has been shared over here itself. The TF-IDF vector being designed. Another one is the cosine similarity architecture, and the third one being used out is the LDE architecture. But these they generally set out in terms of the recommended systems as a cluster-based algorithms. But if we look at the complete architecture, rather if I try to build up a hybrid model on the basis of this particular architecture, I'm finding out more or less they're classifying the data first and then recommending something on the basis of what they have classified. So somehow, like with TF-IDF, I find it out they classify on the basis of on the basis of the vectors or the parameters of comparisons or the qualities of comparison. Cosine similarity is, however, it defines on terms of how exactly the user works out. So for document classifications, we generally look at the images, text, and the videos. But my area of interest is exactly working out. Like Mahesh has been working out in terms of the offline handwritten Devanagari scripts he has worked upon. I've extended this idea to for the signature verifications and been guiding out the research in this. So the signature verification, if you broadly classify again on the basis of the definition of Professor Jennifer Godet, he says that it's a biometric technique that uses the characteristics of the person's signatures, in which includes the pressure, pen lifts, speeds, and the direction of the pen strokes to authenticate the identity. So I have specifically highlighted the parameters which are being used out in the pen tablets currently when their information is being captured during the presentations. So if I look at the person's signatures, I'm finding out that how exactly they press the data. So more the pressure is, more you finding out that the pen tablets are working out differently. And if your hands get lifted up while writing out on a pen tablet, automatically the data get erased. So the direction of the pen strokes also define how frequently you are writing out on these particular pen tablets. So signatures are less accurate than some other biometrics. We say this thing that the signatures are less accurate, but it is the most popular document authentication applications. Like if you write out in terms of the digital signatures being studied now, being studied in most of the areas, but generally they have the OTP passports or the ID codes coming up. But when we say in terms of the documents get verified, it always think that the signature verifications have limited the idea of bulgaries or idea of actually frauds that has been conducted when the data has been captured through the digital transfers. So I'm saying specifically this is because currently when we use out this application for the various information capturing on the behalf of the students, we are finding out that the data capturing has been easier, number one. Secondly, when we conducted the examination using the digital e-pads, we are finding out that the data comparisons that one examination get overlapped with another examination can be easily taken care of. So what we study, like when I conduct the examination using a e-pad, so e-pad is a kind of a device which replaces the answer scripts, and everything in terms of the calculators, in terms of the PDFs that the student wants as an open book examination is available on this particular device. So what we exactly capture, so when we have the handwriting system which is being captured using a machine, we capture the shoulder, arm, finger works as a lever and the fulcrums. So we capture this. How exactly the student hold the pen is also being captured so that the grip of the pen doesn't have their idea of writing get disseminated. So if the student says that I can't hold a pen in a straight manner, which is being used out in the takshilas, the student tend to have their elbows being put on the desk while writing out the things, and they generally write out in an angular directions. So that has been captured with the ePad devices, and we easily fragment that captured information into any of the document architectures. Also, we have these writing instruments captured how frequently the mental state of a student changes out. So what we have done is that when the student is writing out in the examinations, then suddenly he couldn't able to have the examinations. He's not able to finding out an answers. He keep on rubbing the answers quite frequently. So which cause the problems for all the examiners to work upon. So this is also being captured whether the student was nervous during the examinations with the writing samples that we actually getting out. So also the person is unlikely to ever duplicate any signatures exactly. So for us, except the biometric architectures, we have the signatures being used out for doing the examinations for getting the students done. So these are some of the devices that we are using out at Manipal for capturing the student informations. So, hold on. For capturing the student information. So the devices we generally have, the angles get stored. They have all the sensors being inbuilt. So these informations are available at our end in terms of the Excels, and we are periodically scanning these results so that we can have the students get notified that this is where you have to work upon while having the online classes and then online presentations to be given. So these are some of the facts that I've studied out in the past for various authors. These are the issues that are mostly being highlighted out in terms of the banking transactions that has been done. So generally the people use the full names, initials, and the complex signs. So if we are doing out a signature verification architecture, we always says that instead of using the full names, so they should define a new signature window for them, which should be concise and which should be acceptable in terms of a window which can have your data easily get detected. Otherwise, it goes into a forge. I come up with this because some of the people's, what we have finding out is they have a tendency of having their first letter to be very capital, and they have the initials of the surnames. Like for me, if Sumit Srivastav comes up, I want both the S variables to be capital in nature. So if this comes up, then my strokes for capital S should be similar in both the aspects. Otherwise, my checks are generally being get forced up, or my information easily get captured. So I have some unique signs, unique fragmentation architectures that can be captured. Osborne, I have that paper available, which says that the characteristic of natural writing can never be forced. So if I'm not lifting up my pen doing the signatures, so my characteristics will never get forced. This is one of the basic idea. If I'm not lifting up my pen doing the signature window, my data is not being kept. My data cannot be forged. However, if a person lifts the pen doing the signatures on the checks and the various other locations, 50% of the chances are that their data get forged. Also, the Hilton has claimed this thing that also claimed, as Osborne has claimed, that the single most important feature is the movement. And it has been pointed out in his paper is that if the lift has not been done, the tangent value that I'm getting out for the signature will provide me whether the signature is continuous or the pen has been lifted. So he's working on the tangent aspects. He's not working on the local maximas and the local minimas for getting all the information. He's saying that at any point of time, if I put a tangent, if at any point of time I put a tangent, it can provide me in direction in which the signature is moving. Beautifully said in this paper that at any point of time, if I have the tangent being drawn, just hold on. Any point of time, if my tangent has been drawn, then if the tangent can provide me the direction in which my information is moving. So why machine learning in this? Why not we have the image processing architectures which are providing us the correct output? Generally, when I worked out with the image processing, I started out working out with the image processing architectures with the neural networks being involved. What I'm finding out is that the data acquisition was perfect, but the pre-processing is also being perfect. But when I say in terms of the reference signature get mapped up with the forge signature, the feature extraction is causing a problem. That was a problem when I do out in terms of the image comparisons. So I moved towards the architecture of the machine learning. So machine learning is specifically concentrating on the binary or the digitized images. And with these particular digitized images, we have the more in-depth look at how exactly the data being worked upon. And also coming up with the deep neural network architectures nowadays, the feature extractions process has become easier for us. The second most preferred one is the matching. So the distant metrics, as we said out, we are working out with the machine learning. Obviously, we are looking at the data in terms of the quantitative aspects or the qualitative aspects converted into a quantitative aspects. We are not having the two images get compared. We have the data get converted into a quantitative aspects on the basis of which the information has been captured. So obviously applying our distance-based formula or applying any of the norms-based formula, LP norms are being used out. So any norms-based formula, we have the distance matrix being defined, and the minimum being the distance, the more actual being the signature to be an original one. This is being reflected, and if larger being the distance, then we are saying this thing that the signature has been forged. And what is it has been done out is it has our performance evaluation or the number of the characteristics of the data to be studied more frequently. So if I have one of the paper which says out, if you check out the second paper, he proposed 44 parameters, while the Parks and 85 has proposed 90 features on the basis of which the information get captured. That was the beauty of machine learning. So if I start up with the Crane paper in 83, he proposed this idea with 44 features, and whatever the features that have has been set above, which is the total time, the signature path length, the path tangent angles. That is one of the finest thing that I've seen through in terms of the signatures. The path tangent angles defining whether the signatures are perfect or not. The signature velocity and the signature oscillations. So the tangent is related to the signature velocity, which is further being gradient or the gradient-based concept being used out. It may lead to a local maxima or local minima. Remember this. The signature path length define the path tangent angles. The path tangent angles will relate to the concept of signature velocity. The signature velocity will further get differentiated to produce a local maxima and local minima, which is exactly referring to the word signature accelerations. So you have a distance-based formula available. On the distance-based formula, if you have the first derivatives, you have the velocities. If you have the second derivatives, you have the local maxima or minima, where the signature accelerations get contributed or can be achieved. And has been again pointed out is the pen up times and the durations. The pen up time and the durations is also being captured. So the Crane started up with these parameters. These parameters are as the most frequent one. But when the Parks come into picture in 85, he proposed 90 features, and out of 90, almost 33 was significant. If I think of Crane's paper, 44 features were set out, and out of 44, only 16 were significant. While Parks says we have 90 features, out of 90 features, 33 to 36 were significant, which actually increased the accuracy of the signature being compared. Lee in 96 comes up with 15 static and 34 dynamic variations of the signatures. But if you think of these 34 dynamic variations, you're not finding out relevance in terms of the signature verifications. So FAR values being checked out and FRR values being checked out. So if we check out these particular values, we are finding out that the 34 dynamic features doesn't contribute much in terms of the signature verifications architecture. So if I look at the latest techniques available in terms of the distance-based functions, we are always having the linear discriminant function, which is the neural network-based architecture, the LDA formula or the LDA formula, which has been used out. Second is the Euclidean distance classifier, most frequently used. I'm not going into the detail of this because LDF is being used out by Mahesh in the morning lecture for the neural networks. Euclidean distance, I'm just showing you how exactly the Euclidean distance work out when you move towards the SIME, and the synthetic discriminant matching. It's a post-processor in combination. So whatever the responses I'm getting out from the first two architectures, the LDF and the EDC architectures, I'm using out that particular architecture to have my weighted samples being recalculated. A thing that he has proposed, a thing that Wilkinson has and Berry has proposed, but it was of not much significant when I see both the images A and B downstairs. So if you check out both the images, the way V has been returned, the way the V has been returned in image A and in image B has a has a tangent value which has not been reflected perfectly. Yes. You look at the V that has been written over there. There is a curve at this particular position. But if you see out the B architecture, uh, I it doesn't have a curve. It doesn't have a curve at the B position. So that actually causes the problems. So the next technique actually which works out well in terms of the distance functions are the dynamic programming matching, where the two functions, which is the first concept which leads to the two functions get compared in terms of the SIMA architecture. It was introduced in the year 1983-84, the dynamic programming matching, which actually help us out in minimizing the residual errors, or the error component comes up when we have the information captured where the two networks compared at the last. When we have the two networks compared at the last, so assuming this that I have an image A and an image B available, both images have their own significant parameters or their own way of writing out. So when they actually get compared at the last on the basis of the distance value, any one of the image is more perfect than the another one. We are not classifying them, we are just comparing them. When we compare the image, we are finding out that the one image is more profound than the another. But in that particular paper that Kashi and the previous authors have come up, they have not set out how exactly one photo is better than the another. So they have come up with a residual error formula, but they have not defined how they say that one photograph is better than another. So that introduced the concept of the hidden Markov models, which was introduced by Kashi in the year 98. He generated a universal prototype of a signature, and a new signature is assigned a distance from the prototype. So the information that was captured is not limited to a one particular photograph. My original photograph was compared with 10 to 15 photographs before I'm saying that this image is better than the another one. So that is where the dynamic programming matching fails. It doesn't provide that which photograph is the original one and which is the false one. The hidden Markov model says I have the different view or the different angles being proposed for a single image. And when we have that particular image get compared with the different views, I can say this thing that which is an actual one and which is the forged one. And obviously, he used the 21 global and the 5 local features, rather 21 static features and the 5 dynamic features, which was so optimized that the signature verification was become easier. They were much more optimized so that the signature verifications was becoming very easier. So further looking at this, we finally reach to the concept of neural networks. So deformable structures. So for a signature verifications, I can have the deformable structures, like I can have my S being written in small. I can have my S being written in capital. I can have my S being written in the monotype cursive language. So which results in 2.8% as the false recognitions and 18.3% as inconclusive in terms of whether the signature is correct or not. If I write S in a monotype cursive, it becomes inconclusive. If I write S in a monotype cursive language, it becomes inconclusive. If I write S in a smaller case language and my original signature contains it in a uppercase language, then it becomes a false recognition. That is the difference between inconclusive and the false recognition. Um, the font style that I used or the pen style that I used is actually results in categorizing the data as the false recognized or the inconclusive in nature. So if I use a small character S and I have my signature, original signature with the capital character S, then obviously I have the false recognition. I'm again repeating this. And if I have the font style being changed out like monotype cursive type of language or the artistic like type of language being used out for writing this thing, then obviously my data is inconclusive with providing me an output. So Polis in 1998 has come up with this particular thing, and it results in neural networks come into picture in 99, which is the fundamental thing that goes out with the neural networks and which introduce the machine learning concepts for the signature verifications. So it actually narrowed down the difference to an extent that the 18.3 inconclusive architectures have been reduced to almost 7% inconclusive. Just think of how that is what the beauty of the neural network was. From 18.3%, he has reduced it to 7%, and almost 93 to 95% was already achieved in terms of the document classifications by the year 2007 and 8. In fact, if you think of the Indians or the Chinese who are working out on their languages, by 2003, they have come up with the neural networks being almost providing an accuracy in terms of 93 to 94%. So also, the Sebastian in 2003 has extended the neural network architecture for the curves. So he makes use of the tangent and signature tangents and the signature velocity and the signature acceleration for providing the alignment of the data, whether the data is correct or not. He used both the parameters. If on the basis of a signature velocity, I am on the basis of the tangent value, I am able to identify a signature correctly, fine enough. I do not move towards a signature acceleration. But if the signature tangent is not able to provide me a correct output, I move towards the signature acceleration architecture. So this is what the machine learning has done out till this particular point. And the signature verification with the current architectures has not limited itself to the handwritten or the offline based architectures. Nowadays, it can also be used out for checking out the digital signatures for the various documents issued by the governments. So over there also, we are using out the signature verification techniques. And the technique that I'm discussing is the SIME networks is the most frequently one used out. And this has eased out my process to a larger extent. That's why I'm explaining this particular idea, and hope if you are like this particular idea, please do use this in your research. So one of the finest thing that we study in terms of the deep neural network architecture, and pronounced as SIME, introduced in the year 1994 as a offline concept, and later on it has been used out as a online platform being worked upon using this particular network. So SIME network says is that I have two particular neural networks running out parallelly. So I have one particular image, it goes to a neural network. We have the various convolutional information architectures applied, like pooling has been applied, maybe the padding has been applied, we have reduced the information to an extent, and finally I achieve a vector, let's say y cap, rather y1 cap. So if I apply a pre-processing architecture, then I go to this particular neural network, and I have my value y get produced at this particular location. I call this as y1. Similarly, this another particular image or another particular signature get preprocess, which generally converting it to binary, and then binary, the grayscale, then binary, then all the pre-processing steps have been done. It goes to our neural networks where we have the max poolings or the neural networks and the hidden neural networks being applied out, and it produces another value of y, which is we call as the y2. Then we find out whether there is a conflict between the two values. We find out architecture which we call as the conflict between the two values. So if the conflict is large, rather the distance, we measure the distance. A similar simple way of saying this thing, we make use of the Euclidean distance architecture or the L2 norm architecture. So L norm, LP norms being used out. So L2 norm is the best one to be used. So if I use out an L2 norm architecture for a distance measure, if I find it out if the distance value is large, then there is a chance of forgery in the signature. And if the distance value is small, then I can say it is more likely to be the signature that is supposed to be original in nature. So that is what being done out with Simon neural network. So instead of having one particular neural network studying the whole data, providing you an output, then you finding out that the data is forged, you go back again. First you do the testing, then you do the training. But rather, first you do the training, then you do the testing. But over here, we have the two models get running in parallel. So the output of one can be used as a test for the another. Output of one can be used out as a test for the another. The smaller the distance, the more is the similarity. And if more is the similarity, then the data can be, the signature can be considered as unforced. A typical example of the convolutional neural networks. So I have my kernel sending out, that is what I set out, the stride values. Stride values is generally being set to the kernel maximum size. So I'm not going to this, what exactly the stride values are. So I make use of the pooling functions. I make use of the padding functions, the dense layers being also being defined. So image X1 and image X2, both of them is supplied at the different locations, both of them being gone through the same process and produce a value Y. Both of them goes through the same process and produce a value Y, which in terms of the contestive loss functions, we check out the Euclidean distance between the two or the LP2 norm. And if the LP2 norm suggests that there is a loss in the data, fine enough. And if LP2 norm says that there is much lesser loss, so generally the loss value is more than 2% or 3%. Between you can say this thing between 1 to 3%. If there is a loss, then we say that the image has been forged, and it is less than 1% or it is between 0.5 to 1.5%. We can say that the information is original in nature. So it reduced time, but actually it utilized the CPU and the RAM to an highest level. And the most important thing is that you have to make use of the GPU based architecture, the CUDA platform being used out for having this particular network running within the particular time frame. So for showing you the data, I'm running up my particular algorithm from 9:30 onwards in the morning using CUDA. So instead of CUDA, if I use out a CPU based architecture, maybe it took me a whole day or a whole night to actually produce the correct output. So there are two ways of looking at the Simon network function. One is the one we generally call as the popular loss function. So this is a loss function that has been used out. We use out as if y being labeled as a class 0 or 1 and p is the predictions. So y is 0 that the data has been forged, and 1 that the data is correct. And the value of L should be greater than 0.5. We call this to be a binary classification architecture. Now, on the L values is being calculated on the basis of which is positive and which is negative. It has been calculated on the basis of which is positive and which is negative. If you just read the sentence, it says out a baseline vector or an anchor image is compared against a positive vector, truth image, and a negative vector, which is the false image. So the negative vector will force a learning in the network, while the positive vector will act as a regularizer. So I'm talking about the regularization parameters. I'm talking about the concepts of the alpha 1, alpha 2s, beta 1 and beta 2s being used out in the neural networks for the regularization. So what we're doing is I have actual image being available, which I call as L, and this particular anchor image is compared with a positive vector and a negative vector. So if we add up this, the value should be near to L. The value should be near to L. So if the value is near to L, then we can say that my image is acceptable as an original image. If the value is far away from L, so if L is less than this calculated value, if L is less than this calculated value, then we say that the data has been forged. Or if the L is less than equal to this particular value plus a constant factor, this value plus a constant factor, let's say 1. So L, if the value of L is 0.5, and over here the difference is 0.25 plus 1, which is 1.25, then obviously the image has been forced. And if the value of L is 0.5, the difference over here is coming out to be, let's say, 0.001, and the value is 1.001, then we might say that our data is not being forged. So remember this, the positive value is acting as a regularizer. So it regularizes the way the information has been checked, and the negative vector will act learning in the networks. So where the weights need to be updated is being done with the negative vectors. So just think of this is exactly the diagram being shown out. This is the contestive loss functions, or the triplet loss function being used. The same way it has been done. I have distance calculated for the positive image. I have a distance calculated of the actual from the negative image. So distance calculated of the actual from the positive image, and distance calculated of the actual from the negative image. So P is a random positive sample and N is a negative random sample. In case if this value comes out to be 0, in case this particular value is coming out to be 0, then we have a constant bias factor or an arbitrary margin factor that has been added up in order to produce an output. So if I say this function max, if you think of this particular function max, then in terms of a neural network based architecture, this function is known as a rectified linear unit, or we generally call this to be a ReLU method. This method has been called as the ReLU method. Maximum of 0, z, that was a ReLU method function. This is out maximum of 0, z. So either the z is maximum or the 0 is maximum. So if the value of z is coming out to be maximum, that is the value of that particular variable L. Now in the contestive loss function, if this particular distance of the actual value of the positive sample is greater than the negative sample, then obviously the value will return in a positive aspect. So that's supposed to be saying that it is a actual image. And if it comes out to be a negative, then it's supposed to be or the value is coming out to be 0, then we are saying this thing that this is supposed to be a negative image architecture. So this is the ReLU function. Remember this, when I apply this thing in terms of the Python scripts, or when I apply this thing in terms of the OpenCV scripts or the MATLAB scripts, we're generally finding out that this function has been replaced with a ReLU based architecture, rectified linear unit based architecture. Applications of the Simon networks. These are the applications that has been used out in the Simon networks. It's a one-shot learning because we have two classes, the two photographs being compared at the same time, and in a one shot we are getting out whether the information is being correctly captured or not. In one particular shot, we are getting out whether the information has been correctly captured or not on the basis of this Simon network. That was one of the finest architecture that was developed in the deep learning workshop in 2015. In 2016, I find out another thing that has been published, which involves a pedestrian tagging for video surveillance. Remember this, image surveillance was best captured with the convolutional neural network. image surveillance is being used out for the convolutional neural networks. And if you want the data to be more precise and in the limited time frame, you use out the Siemens CNN network. It was not a ReLU-based network. It is a convolutional neural network where ReLU was not applied. ReLU function was not applied, or rectified linear unit functions were not applied. So it comes out in 2016, one of the finest paper that I find it out in terms of the computer visions and the pattern recognitions. And the third one, which is matching resumes to the job. So what currently we are doing out is we are working out on comparing the poetries. In US, what exactly they are doing out is whatever the decisions currently taken up in the courts, they are using out that particular decisions and comparing out with all the previous years where the same kind of the decisions have been posted. Remember this. So they are comparing the two scripts. One script which act as an original one, another script which has been the article being used out in the past, for having the same decisions being taken. So if both the articles results in the same decision, remember this. Think of a keyword when the latest case being worked out upon Sushant Singh. So if the narcotics information, and what the judge predicts the output on the basis of the article says, if both of the things have come out truly, then the correct punishment has been posted. If both of them have a deviation, then there is a deviation in terms of the punishment. So that is where the US currently working upon in using the Simon networks, more supported by Professor Hemant Mishra. He is one of the finest one who has produced the articles on the Simon CNN networks being used out for the poetic comparisons as well as for the document comparisons in the various locations. So this was the presentation for the signature verification architecture. Any questions that need to be posted currently, I can answer this as we move towards the coding aspect of this. Any questions to be answered? I almost about to hand my signature verification process. Any questions to be answered? I start my presentation on the practical aspect of this. So, hope the screen is visible to us.
Yes, sir, it is visible.
Thank you. So before going into the presentation, I have set out the things in terms of the signature-based architecture was that I have to use the GPU running up for the signature verification. So it makes the task a little bit faster. So when you go up in the Colabs or the Google Colabs, you move to runtime. The very first thing that you need to do, you move to runtime. You change the runtime type. I am again saying this thing. You move to runtime. You change the runtime type, and the hardware accelerators initially being set to none. The hardware accelerator is initially being set to none. So none says it is working out on a CPU-based architecture. So you have the GPU being used out over here. You just click on the GPU and say save. You click on the GPU and say save. Since I've already done this, so I cancel this idea. But the very first thing that you do out when you're working out with the Colabs, rather you're working out with the Simon-based architecture is you have to make use of the CUDA platform. And for having the CUDA platforms on most of the laptops, it is generally not being possible. So that's why we move towards the Colabs or the Google Colabs where we actually work out. And the process that need to be done is you move to runtime. From runtime, you have to change the runtime architecture. Initially being set to none, you use the GPU for having the hardware accelerator to move very fast. So I just show you what exactly the data is. So my data is a signature data that has been taken from the Kaggle. So I have my Kaggle account, which is exactly showing you the data, various data information over here. So data is a Dutch-based signature data that has been shared on Kaggle. So we have almost 60 images, 60 to 70 images multiplied by 10. So every image has been captured 10 times for the training aspects. And after this, from these 60 images, 20 images have been chosen. 20 images have been chosen for the testing purpose. So if I just show you the data on my laptop, so this is my actual image in the testing, and this is the forged image. This is actually the forged image. So if you compare both the things, my first image in the forged data has a curve. There is a blank space over here. You just look at this. There is a space over here. And in the same way, if you look at the original image, you are finding out that there was no space. The image was perfect. It was ending over here. After this, there is a larger distance over here. So I can say this data has been forged. So with this forged image, also look at the curve movement. The curve movement was like this. However, you check the original image, the curve movement was like this. So instead of having been pointing this thing over here, the tangent value is pointing out in the upper direction. So this was my data. I'm putting up, in case the results not get processed in time, I have processed the result in on the Kaggle platform itself. So it will help me out in showing you what exactly the data is look like. So for the Torch Vision, Torch Vision is one of the library which is being available in Python, which helps you out in having all the data being loaded. In case you are not comfortable with the Torch Vision, you just simply import these particular utilities. It has the various sub libraries available like data sets, data loaders, or the data sets available, which help you out in making the image processing or the signature-based architectures to run a little bit faster. So I compile this, then I have my own simple functions being defined, how exactly to be plot, what is the curve, what is the size of the text to be shown, how the images to be shown, that is the normal process. I mount my drive. So I have a Google Drive folder available. I just mount that particular folder in the Colabs. So whatever being placed out on the Google folder is available in this particular Colab architecture. And this particular architecture being used out for the processing of the data. So very simple things have been done in the initial architecture is, I have my training folder where all the images have been captured, has been defined. I have the testing folder being defined. I have a training batch size of 32 and a purchase is set to 20. Why it has been set to 20? A simplest answer is that when I moved to data, I have 20 images to get tested. So if you start from 49 and you move to 69, I have 20 images to get captured. So my iteration will go for 20 images. I have my training files and the testing files available where the labels have been kept for the training data and the test data, the simplest one to be worked upon. Now over here, I defined my Simon network dataset. Simple way to move forward, the major thing that need to be done known to you. These are the simple process. Anyway, if you search on the internet, you are finding out that these particular processes are most frequently available in terms of the directory access. So not much has been done to this. The major thing that I worked upon is I just give a call to the Simon network dataset. So it have my raw images. It have my raw images folder get accessible to me. That is the only thing that I've done in this particular architecture. Instead of using this particular thing, what you can have is you can have the predefined functions. You have the predefined functions that are available in the data loaders. Predefined functions, I mean specifying this thing. There is a predefined function that is available in data loader to have this particular function get replaced. To have this particular function get replaced, you have a predefined data loader function available. So need not be necessary to do this. I have a specific reason, so which can be answered later on. I just shown the images. and it converted to a kind of a data set, or what you call as a data frame, in which the information has been captured. A data set or a data frame in which the information has been captured. Now the thing of interest. Over here, I have already said out that I'm applying a ReLU-based function. I said this thing, I have applied a ReLU-based function. So what actually the convolutional neural network is doing out is, first, the neural network will apply a convolutional 2D layer. Neural network will apply a convolutional 2D layer. After this, it applies a ReLU function. After this, it apply a local response norm function. And after this, it apply a max pool function. So that is the first step. I apply a convolutional 2D network, then ReLU, then local response norm, then a max pool function that has been applied. The stride was set to 2. I know most of the people who are working out in this particular field know what exactly the stride is. But in case you are not know this, you fix it to the kernel size. You fix it to the kernel size. So I apply this particular max pool function. Now this was the first step. Now when I applied the very next time, I tend to have a dropout. So when I have the second stage neural networks available, I have a dropout that is available where the value of P was set to 0.3. The value of P is set to 0.3. Generally, I set it to 0.5, but I have the value of P has been set to 2.3. Now, why I'm using a dropout function over here is that if in case the information is of no relevance to me, if in case the information is no relevance for me, I can have the new information get inserted at a later stage. Instead of having a ReLU function, I can have a LSTM function being used out. Remember this. I have a dropout. In the first stage, I do not have a dropout. Whatever the information that has been produced has been carried forward. In the second stage, I have a dropout. After this dropout, in the third stage, I can, instead of having this particular ReLU function, you can have a LSTM function being used out at this particular place. That is where SciMe has a beauty. You can have a LSTM function being used out in along with the ReLU functions for generating the output for your data set. It will increase your output efficiency and the accuracy. That has been done. So a point of change from, I'm sharing this particular code. This is available online also. So what they have done is when they use out a dropout function, they generally say that we continue the same particular function at all the 3 stages. What we have done in terms of developing a hybrid model is that instead in the third stage of using out a ReLU, I'm using out LSTM function for getting a more accuracy, rather getting a more perfect output. This has been done. The paper is in publication and it produced me an output. Also, when I use out an ReLU function, I have to use out a convolutional 3D architecture. Instead of 2D, I have to use out a 3D architecture. Remember this. So a 3D architecture can also be used out over here. Instead of when I use out an LSTM function, I can use out the convolutional 3D based architecture for solving the problems. Fine enough. So this is the contestable loss function. A simple way, I've used out a torch mean value function for making the things done easier, and the Euclidean distance with the set to LP2 norm architecture. This is the LP2 norm architecture. So I use out the LP2 norm architecture for producing an output, and finally I have the loss get calculated. Now, if just hold on. Yes, fine enough. So my loss get calculated, and I use out the data loader function, these functions to get produce me an output. Now this is where the thing is. And the point of interest, what I find it out is, most of the users, when I study on the Kaggle, and I have the informations being floated to me, I find it out is that most of the students have said out that we do not have the CUDA platform available at our particular end. So that has been sorted out with the Colab based architecture. Now, instead of CUDA, you can use a CPU based architecture. Instead of CUDA, you can use a CPU based architecture. So Simon Network, what we call as the constructor has been called. Along with this, after dot, instead of CUDA, you can write CPU. Instead of CUDA, you can write the CPU based architecture. So that has been shown in over here itself. So if the torch.device is not finded out as CUDA, if the torch.device is not finded out as CUDA, you can use a CPU. You can use a CPU based architecture that I have done. So instead of at this particular position, we are having the CUDA, I can use a CPU also. So I can define my function like this. Instead of this, you can use our CPU-based architecture. But if you use a CPU-based architecture, your function will not run for all the epochs. As soon as he is finding out that the information is not being captured correctly, it immediately runs in a broken pipe architecture and your information has a data loss. Now look at this, when I use out CUDA-based architecture, all my iterations have been run successfully and it provide a loss value for me. It provide a loss value for me for the every test image that I have used out. For every test image that I've used out, first I trained my model for almost 20 iterations. I randomly choose the values of the images. I randomly choose the values of the images and save this model with the name model.pt. And save this model with the name model.pt. Now, same way, when you're saying this thing that you are using out a Simon network.cpu over here, the same way you have to do at this particular location also. Instead of CUDA, you have to write .cpu. Remember this. Instead of CUDA, at this particular location, you need to write .cpu, so that the image is being processed on the basis of the CPU-based performance parameters, not on the basis of the GPU accelerators. So this is a location where you need to have the changes need to be done. Again, I am changing the data at this location. The things need to be done is CPU. That is why we have our own train functions coming up. So I made changes in aspect of if we do not have the CUDA platforms available and I'm working on a standalone device with limited access to the internet bandwidth. So since I'm running this thing from 9:30 onwards, it was completed almost at 12:15 or 12:30. It was completed almost at 12:30. So it took me 3 hours to having the correct output using CUDA. So if you use out a CPU-based architecture, maybe it took 1.5 hours, but there's a chance that all the iterations doesn't work out perfectly. There's a chance that all the iterations doesn't work out perfectly. Also, if your system supports a CUDA driver or the GPU-based drivers, it will say that the information is running perfectly. Else, it doesn't produce any output, so you need to type a CPU-based architecture over here. So RMS-PROP is one of the optimizing parameters that has been used out in the neural networks or in the deep learning architectures. With RMS-PROP, we use out the gradient descent architectures also. So after this, I just check out whether my device is the CUDA or CPU based. If it is a CUDA based, my iteration runs out. If it's not being a CUDA based, the model, when I give a call to the train, actually have a broken pipe architecture. Just show you how exactly the broken pipe looks like. This is the line exactly you are getting out. That is exactly the line you are getting out, which we call as a broken pipe architecture. It runs to an extent It runs to an extent like it runs for the first iteration and it produced the first value for the jth loop. But after this, I have a broken pipe symbol coming up. So CPU doesn't have that much memory being processed in terms of the CUDA-based architecture. Now, once my model has been trained and I have my loss values available, I check out my test data. I check out my test data on the basis of the loss values. And once the loss values get compared, you just check out. My dissimilarity value is 0.38, which was less than 1. So my image was original. Over here, my dissimilarity value was 0.25. I said my image was original. So look at the dissimilarity variable. I have defined my dissimilarity variable over here as 1 point something. So if I move out with this, I have now over here, why exactly the dissimilarity value at 0.10 is labeled as forced? Because if I look at this particular tangent value, if I look at the tangent value, it moves out perfectly. But if I look at the local maxima or the local minima that produced over here, is more dense in comparison to this. And that thing has been checked out, and that thing has been checked out at this particular location over here. So if you look out the denseness of the data, that's why I said out the signature acceleration and the signature velocity both are of importance. So over here the tangent value was perfect. Over here the tangent value is also perfect, but over here the signature acceleration was limited. Over here the signature acceleration was dense. Hence, on this particular parameter values, the idea was considered to be a forged one. So all the 20 images have been checked out, and after this, the final results have been produced. So I checked out at different locations. Now, in case if I have the CPU-based architecture running out, since it has run for one particular image, like it produces you the current loss function as 1.2454. So it will only check for the first image he actually recovers it. First forced image that actually it recovers is, after this all the dissimilarities value is supposed to be 0. So CPU has a problem. CPU based architecture in terms of the signature verification has a problem. So we prefer to go with the GPU based architecture where data are more profound in terms of the output get produced. The function of importance. See, all these functions you can design by simply looking at the mathematics that need to be defined. What we have done is, what the point of interest actually comes out for the researchers is, at this position, alpha is set to 0.99. What if the alpha was set to 0.7? I have an answer to this. Alpha has been set to 0.7. What if the alpha was set? Second is, instead of setting alpha to a specific value, if I can put alpha to be defined using a random function. What if alpha being defined using a random function? How exactly my gradient parameters work upon? So I have a learning limit being defined, I have an alpha parameter being defined, the epsilon value being defined in terms of the RMS curve. So what if the alpha is random in nature? So whether my system is producing the correct output, that is a point of interest. Second major architecture that can be worked upon by the researchers are, I have make use of the LP2 norms. We have LP1 and LP2 norms being available. So I make use of this LP2 norm to produce me an output. Instead of using an Euclidean distance, can I use a concept which I call as similarity measures? If you're able to do this, remember this. That is my current PhD scholars are working upon. That I have defined the Simon networks using an Euclidean distance-based architecture. Now, instead of using an Euclidean distance, if I use out a similarity measure, which is 1 minus Euclidean distance. So how exactly the formula will change and how exactly my output will change. Third major point of interest is, one, I have said that you can use out an LSTM based architecture. Now, why ReLU being used out? Why can't I have my own function being placed instead of ReLU? Instead of having max 0,3, max 0, z as a function, mistake, I can have another function which I called as 10 hyperbolic x. I can have a function like cos hyperbolic x, which can be used out in the sensors. So this function is specifically working out well in the sensor. But when I use out this particular architecture for predictions in the image processing, it doesn't produce me a better response. But in terms of the sensors, it is producing a more better response in comparison to ReLU. So what if I replace at the second and the third location of the ReLU function by these two functions? And what will be the actual change in the output? So that is the point of interest currently we are working upon in terms of the Simon networks. The Simon networks, as defines in the year 1994, has been optimized fully. What you can do is you can play with the functions that has been used out in the neural networks. You can play with these particular functions. Besides this, no extra work can be done with this particular Simon neural networks. But the field has been increased. It has been, instead of the image processing architectures, nowadays it has been used out for the curve predictions. It has been used out for the signature verifications. It has been used out for a 3D verifications architecture. Remember this, a 3D based architecture, Simon is the best one. So I end up my lecture over here and I'm open for the questions.
Sir, my question is that suppose a new user comes for the signature verification, then in that case, how the model works when the model has not seen the signature of the person earlier?
When a new user is registering himself, it has a predefined function. We have one predefined function that we have used out that has not been shown in this over here. It is in untitled 0.ipynb. What we've done is we have like in case of an image, we can think of a person that he can wear a spec, he can have his beard shape, and he can have a clean shape architecture. So all that possible combinations we have taken. We start with a 90-degree angle and we have moved from 90 degree to plus 180 and 20 degree. And we have all the different patterns that have been captured. After this, we have the data being processed on the basis of the testing figures.
Okay, thank you, sir. Sir, in most of the cases, ADAM optimizer is being used, but here you have used RMS. So how to compare all these optimizer functions and when the best could be applied?
See, ADAM optimizer have a one parameter loss. Instead of having 3 parameters being worked upon, he is working out on 2 parameters. So when you have 3 particular parameters being working out over there, the more chances of accuracy get increased. So I have 3 parameters, that is the learning rate, the alpha, the epsilon, that is available over here along with the momentum. But in the ADAM classifier, we do not have the epsilon values to be used out perfectly. Else, if you compare RMS-Prof with an ADAM-based architecture, you are finding out a difference of 2.5% in terms of the accuracy values. Hope the question has been answered.
Yes, sir.
There is one question that has been posted. Still not clear why exactly we use and benefit of the ReLU. See, ReLU has been working on the logistic loss function. If I show you out the PPT, if I again work out with the PPT over here, over here. It is working on this particular parameter. What if the value of L is greater than 0.5? The Z function that we call as the activation function has the value plus 1, else the value has 0. So instead of this, I suggested you that you can use out a tan h function or a cos h function. It works out perfectly well. In fact, tan hyperbolic x works out very well in comparison to the ReLU one. But the thing is, the ReLU gives you an option to be for the binary classifiers. The ReLU is the best one. It can produce an output as 0 and 1. So that is where the ReLU is best. If you want the what we call as we have the multi-classifier architectures being used out, then we have a different sensor networks being working out on this. So if you have the multiple classifiers where the value goes between 0, 0.5, 1, so you have three classes being defined, then the ReLU doesn't work out well over there. Deepak sir has posted his Simon network is used for the online signature verification. Yes, sir, we are using out for the online signature verifications also. So currently we have conducted the examination for using the online platform where the student signature has been captured using the ePads. So there also we have made use of this particular Simon network. So it has been tested. It has been tested perfectly. Okay, Dr. Kavita has said that they want this the Python file for practicing. Ma'am, you work out, you go on Kaggle, you find out a better file than this. However, this will be shared. You go on Kaggle, you find it out much better response on this. I'm working out in terms of the crop predictions. So over there, this file can be useful. However, if you're working out on the signature-based architectures, you have to make some modifications in this.
Sir, if we change the last layer in multi-class classification also, like LSTM you have used in the signature verification, if you use in multi-class classification also, suppose disease prediction like this, then it would also make some impact, or it will just be useful for binary classification.
For disease classification, we have tested for 3 classes. It works out well. Accuracy difference doesn't we find it out much, but for 3 classes we have done this and it works out perfectly. We can make a change. That is possible. That is that though you find out one of the finance paper published in 2019 by Tiang. Tiang was one of the Chinese author who has worked out on the multi-classifiers using LSTM as well as with the ReLU. But it is not SIME. It was not SIME based, but he has worked out with these 2 particular algorithms at the 3rd layer, and the results were good. So he used out 2 classes. We have worked upon the 3 classes, and the results are near to what Tiang has produced.
Thank you, sir.
So offline signatures and online signatures work upon, yes, perfectly you can work upon. But for me, what I find it out is online is getting a more responses, a more better response in comparison to the offline signatures. Generally nowadays the people are, instead of going to the banks, they are using out the online facilities for this. So with the edge technology being introduced, you're finding out that the signature verification again come into picture. So with 5G, we have the edge technology being produced. The latest presentation by Jio networks have shared their ideas. So definitely you get a better response in terms of the online signatures. Yes, sir. We can combine the handcrafted features and the chain extracted features for verification. We have already done this, and the paper has been published. But the responses were limited to 95%. We can't able to achieve more accuracy, like 97 to 98. We can achieve with the normal features with the CNN. but the handcrafted features we are able to achieve 95% only. We have done this. That is possible.
So can we implement through this code through Keras also, or it is PyTorch is required only?
Ma'am, PyTorch has been superimposed on Keras or Theano, whichever you want to work upon. It has been superimposed. Like if I just share the screen again. Just give me a minute. I've just opened up my Anaconda browser. So I'm just showing you how exactly we work out on the local desktops. Just take a minute or so. Meanwhile, any other question that can be answered?
So Deepak sir has some question in chat box.
Is GDPS dataset appropriate for signature vacation experiments? So you have to design your few more samples from the given sample. Like I have done it with the what we call as the 8 quadrant architecture we have make use in terms of the GDPS data sets. So there were 4 quadrants being defined. We have designed it to the 8 quadrants. Then we have more samples to be worked upon. With the given samples, the accuracy percentage is acceptable. Whatever we are achieving out is acceptable. But instead of 4 quadrants, if you can work out with 8 quadrants, that is what actually a 360-degree view will give up. Okay, so hope the screen is visible. Anaconda Navigator.
Yes, sir.
So in the environments, what we do is we are in home itself. Instead of the base environment, we make use of the TensorFlow environment. So once the TensorFlow environment has been launched, over this, any of the console or any of the IDE platform can be used for the Python coding. So that is now. Now, if I'm using out Jupyter over here, it is working out on the TensorFlow based architecture, or you can use out the Keras applications also. I have with my environment all the Keras libraries for the deep learning has been already. So with the TensorFlow, I have Keras and as well as the Theanos, also the Theano is working on. No, it's not being implemented. So I've done this. But again, on the base environment, you can't have these particular applications working out. Sir, I'm experimenting like what Deepak sir was saying. What is the scope of the research in the signature verification now? Sir, I'm experimenting with the different ideas of like if you say the soft computing algorithms, we have worked upon not much benefit we have find it out. We have worked upon the optimizer algorithms, or we call as the simulated annealing type of algorithms we have worked upon. There the results are satisfactory, but not optimized enough. But with signature verifications, if you can have a model at the first layer, at the first level, you have a Simon network architecture. At the second layer, you have a greedy approach, or you can as a soft computing approach being applied. Then might be you're getting out a new response. Adam and RMS prop has already been optimized for it. So nothing much can be new think of. However, application domains can be changed. Application domains can be changed. Accuracy in terms of signature verifications, I've already shown. Accuracy of 98.69 is already being achieved. So 1.13, the banks are happy to have this fault tolerance coming up.
So now I request all the participants, if they have any query, they can ask to sir, or they can put into chat box. Okay. So if any participants have any query, they can ask to sir related document image classification.
I'm not sure about this. For me, 4 GB RAM is working well with the TensorFlow. It's upon how much volume that you are processing to the TensorFlow that make the sense. So another question being posed is, I am planning to make an integrated system of signature verification and recognition. Possible, sir? Possible. That is possible at our end. We have done it for signature verification, signature classification, and signature recognitions. We've done it for all the 3 steps. So also in terms of for what we call as shading techniques, or we have the water shading techniques being used out in the documents that we have also done with this particular architecture.
Okay.
Yes, sir, Sai Kumar, sir. Yes, instead of value, you can use 10H. You can use the normal activation function where we have the exponential X architecture being used out. And a new one which is coming up nowadays is 10hx divided by cos hx. 10 hyperbolic x divided by cos hyperbolic x. So that is a new function being used out nowadays. So coming up, it's in the initial stage. Most of the mathematicians are working on this, but they have used out currently with the document classifiers, not with the image classifiers. NLP programming they have used.
Sir, I have a last question. Like suppose we are doing multi-class classification and for some of the classes, the precision is good and and the accuracy is also reaching 98% like this. But for some of the classes, the precision is very low. So how to handle such problems when the accuracy is high, but some of the classes are misclassified by the classifier? So in that case, how to increase the accuracy for those specific classes whose precision is very low?
Ma'am, data is not being correctly processed. Simplest answer to this. See, if for the 70% of the data, my information is being correctly processed, and for 30% there is a problem, then maybe the parameter of interest or the feature of interest is not being correctly captured. So what we do out is we first look at the data. Like what we have done is this time while we are processing the results, we have finding out that all the marks were ranging between 75 to 600. And in a scale of A plus to E, what we are finding out is that at 75, a student is getting out E grade. Just think of. So when we ask the head of the department with a question that, ma'am, last time at 75, you have given the grade as C, and this time you are giving a grade as E. So don't you think that there is a misclassification of the data has been done, or the parameter has not been correctly captured? And always the problem is with the data. 80% of the cases, the problem lies with the data, not with the algorithm.
Thanks a lot, sir. Thank you. So it was really a great session. We learned a lot that how to classify document image using machine learning. So I thank you once again. Now I request all the participants for the lunch and we'll again reconnect at 2 p.m. for the image classification using recurrent neural network by Dr. Mahesh Jangir sir. And I again thank you, sir. Thank you, Sumit sir, for the informative